How's it going, everybody? DBSports back with another Cyclone preview and recap video. Today I'm joined by the other half of the Firmly Entrenched podcast from Iowa Everywhere. A few weeks ago we had Nick Osen, and today joining me is Jake Brend. Jake, how you doing?
I'm good, David. I'm sorry you had to settle for me and not Nick, but I'm glad you had me on.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I figured, if I had Nick on, I might as well see how many other Iowa Everywhere guys I could poach. So
Yeah,
and
yeah,
Chris
just for
doesn't answer
pity.
my DMs, so I had to I had to go for Jake. No, but jokes aside, good performance from Iowa State last week. Maybe on the opposite side of the ball as people were expecting.
Yeah, they won. They changed some stuff up. They saw what wasn't working against Ohio. It continued to not work in that first quarter, and then they finally started to air it out. And sure enough, you beat a bad team, and
Yeah,
that's how the offense should look against a bad team. The defense maybe had its worst game over the last 2 or 3 years outside of that TCU game last year. But I don't think it's any reason to be that concerned. I think
yeah,
more of the optimism should be going towards the offense and Rocco Becht. He seems like the real deal through 4 games.
yeah, for sure. I really liked what I saw from Rocco on Saturday. Again, very similar to the UNI game. He wasn't putting the ball in harm's way. He was he was going to where the open guy was. He wasn't forcing anything. And for this Iowa State offense, I think that's exactly what you need to do. To be able to move the ball down the field. Now, going to that running game that hasn't worked. We saw Cartavius Norton got hurt early on in that game. How much of a factor do you think that was in sort of the switch up in the offense? Do you think that had anything to do with the transition to more of the quote unquote Cyclone air raid, or?
It probably played a little bit of a part, but even if Norton was healthy back there, they were still running into a brick wall
Yeah,
pretty much every single time they ran. So I think eventually they're going to have to change to that anyways. And now,
right.
when you talk about Eli Sanders, when he was able to burst out a couple good runs in the fourth quarter, I would say that half of that is probably the fact that the offense had already opened it up and the defense had to respect the passing game more, and that opened up a few more holes. And I think it also plays a factor just that Eli was the fresh running back. He hasn't carried the ball since week 1 against you and I.
Yeah.
So I would assume that his legs are a little bit more fresh. He was able to get more burst, and they used him more outside, which is how you should use a speed back.
Yeah, for sure. I really liked, you mentioned those couple runs in the fourth quarter there. That touchdown run, it was designed to go up the middle. At least that's what it looked like. But, Eli able to find that burst to the outside, get around the right tackle, and take it to the pylon there.
Yeah, bursted outside. I feel like we've been saying this for a year and a half now. Stop trying to run Sanders between the tackles. Not a, not a. It's not a slight on him, but
Right.
he's just the more prototypical, like, not your third down back. He's just try and get him outside the tackles, try and get him to bust one loose, and that's exactly what happened. And
Right.
he's not small by any means, but he's not a very big guy. Norton is your similar build to a fullback.
Yeah.
Of course, you want that guy going up the middle and stuff, but Sanders, and then even to an extent, Sama and Carson Hansen, I feel like all those players are more built to be in that, what, in the flats, catching
Yeah.
passes, halfback sweeps, stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. Big day. You mentioned the air raid. Big day from Jalen Noel and Daniel Jackson
Yeah.
both, which was really nice to see. Jaden Higgins did not have a very big day. He only had one reception. I don't have the targets number up immediately for me, but you know, to me, it doesn't really matter who that guy's going to be as long as it's somebody. And against Oklahoma State, we got it from both Jalen and Daniel Jackson.
Yeah, so you've got the guy or the guys in this scenario. But I do think more importantly is they spread the ball out to other people
Yeah,
also.
for sure.
It wasn't I mean, Xavier Hutchinson was so good last year. He
Yeah,
was one of the 3 best receivers in the country. But when you're targeting him 15, 17, 18 times a game, it gets a little predictable and it gets a little easier to cover. And to his credit, he was so talented that he was able to do that.
Yeah.
It also led to more interceptions. It led to more tips. It led to more routes being jumped. So when you're spreading the ball to 4 receivers, 2 running backs, 3 tight ends, you're keeping the defense way more honest.
Yeah.
And that's what I think was the most encouraging part. And we've all known Noel has that because he did it in the Cheez-It Bowl against Clemson at the end of his freshman year.
Yeah.
We saw glimpses of it last year, but there's just a lot of drop passes, a lot of stuff that just frankly isn't going to win you ball games. So it was good to see that Noel be back, and then Daniel Jackson. What a story he's been. I don't know if have you heard this story on.
Yeah, he was in a car accident, and doctors said he wasn't going to play football again, and so to see him recover.
It was almost a fatal car accident. His senior year of high school, he was able to get his way back after having scholarships pulled. Iowa State stayed, and then on top of that, he battled injuries. 2 of his first 3 years in Ames. So
yeah,
to see him healthy, making an impact, is really cool. And he's a great guy to interview.
Yeah, I love that release on the corner route touchdown when we rolled. It was the play of the week that I highlighted on the channel the other day. But man, he took that little jab step backward. Defender just face planted. I mean, you get releases like that. I mean, you can't always rely on the step back, but I mean, he's got some quickness. He's got some good hands, and really good to see him taking flight on Saturday. Switching to the defensive side of the ball, I mean, I would agree that it was probably one of the worst, if not the worst, performances. But really, you take out 2 plays, Jake, the defense really didn't play that bad. There was the 71-yard run from Ollie Gordon that set up the first touchdown, and then, of course, the Caleb Bacon getting left on an island to cover one of their running backs on a go route. But really, outside of that, you got the 2 takeaways, the pick from Tampa to ice the game. What did you see from the defense, even though it was maybe a little bit shakier?
Yeah, you mentioned those 2 big plays. That's typically what the Haycock Iowa State defense hasn't allowed, at least consistently. You'll usually get, you'll get 3 or 4 of those a year. So I think seeing both of them come in the same game, in the same half, against a team that we just didn't really expect much from, I think is where it was concerning.
Yeah.
But when you put those plays by themselves, one was just kind of a bad angle on the tackle, and the other was just probably a timeout should have been called when you've got a freshman linebacker on kind of a slot receiver.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I just think my lukewarm concerns with the defense is just the lack of pressure from a pretty young front 7 so far, which I think we as a fan base, we as the media, didn't factor in the losses enough of Will McDonald and MJ Anderson. But it's different because the secondary is so much better.
Yeah.
If Iowa State was getting this amount of pressure in 2017, 18, 19, 20, any of those years, they would not have had a top half defense in the Big 12.
No.
Because their secondary wasn't frankly good enough to fall back on. Now it is. So I almost wonder if Haycock eventually might start to trust that secondary more, bring a 4th guy, bring a 5th guy, try and get some added pressure. It's interesting. I'm not John Haycock.
Right.
He's the one who's turned around the defense, but if there was one nitpick through 4 games, it would just be probably try and get to the quarterback a little bit more.
Yeah, I just have the ESPN stat sheet up here in front of me. Only 3 tackles for loss and then the 1 sack. And, I mean, the 1 sack was a big one. It was Singleton got back there, and I don't know what Bowman was doing. It
was like an 18-yard sack.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous.
Bowman tried to spin out of it and lost his footing and just kept going backwards. I don't know. But, you mentioned, I think the biggest loss, obviously Will McDonald going to the Jets, and he's trying to work his way into more of a role there. But really, the big loss to me, MJ Anderson. I don't think that was really talked about enough. Because obviously Will McDonald's going to get double team. MJ Anderson was winning one-on-ones every single rep, it seemed like. So to not have that guy to sort of, that tandem, if you will, it seems like we're really missing that more than people would think.
Yeah, totally. And don't get me wrong, Oyedem's been really good.
Yeah.
But he's still raw. He's still young.
Yeah.
So who knows where he'll be mid-November.
Yeah, I think the same could be said there for Big Citrus in the middle, Dominic Orange.
Yeah.
That's a lot of body to be moving quickly in a Power 5 conference against Power 5 O linemen, but I mean he's done fairly well. You see flashes here and there, and like you said, it'll be interesting to see come November, the last couple weeks of the season there, Texas, Kansas State, where these guys have progressed throughout the season.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you trust that Haycock's going to figure it out.
Yeah.
Because he hasn't given any reason over the last 6-7 years to think otherwise.
Right. So big win for Iowa State on Saturday, getting back to 500, 2-2 on the season. Just to run into what looks like could be a buzzsaw in the Big 12 here. Oklahoma going out with a vengeance here. Texas as well seems to be doing that, but Oklahoma 14th in the country at 4-0. They have had some really strong performances, including a win at Cincinnati this past Saturday. Jake, what do you see going down in Norman?
Yeah, so I watched their game against Cincinnati. Their defense is really good. They've got a lot of playmakers. They're really, really strong up front. And that's what they brought Brent Venables in to do.
Yeah.
He was the defensive mastermind at Clemson. So that's what made last year so perplexing. You kind of expected their offense to fall off a little bit. You didn't expect the Venables coach defense to be that bad. Well, now they've got his guys in there, and they're humming.
Yeah.
Their offense, though, I'm not going to call it bad or average by any means. It's still a good offense. But if you're the Iowa State fan that checked out last year because the team wasn't very good, didn't really watch much Big 12 football, this is not the Oklahoma team that you're used to watching over the last decade. So from that standpoint, if the Iowa State defense plays like we know it can, like it did against Iowa, like it did against Ohio, I think this could be a game in like the low 20s to low teens. Just because obviously the OU defense is good. Iowa State's going to struggle to move the ball.
Yeah.
And they're not going to be able to run the ball. That's for sure. If you can't run the ball against Oklahoma State, you're not running the ball in Oklahoma. So it will go down to beating them in the air over the top. And OU's got some athletes in their defensive backfield, as always. So
yeah,
I think that's really what it comes down to, is avoiding mistakes and hoping to keep this in like that, I don't know, try to hold OU to no more than like 24 points.
Don't make it a track meet is what I'm hearing.
Yes, that's how a wise man would put it.
Yeah. I think you're onto that. It's weird to say that Oklahoma is a defense first team because
it doesn't feel right.
It's not the Oklahoma that you're used to, but I mean, even still looking at that, I mean, they didn't play anybody in the non-con, but they put up 73 on Arkansas State and they put up 66 at Tulsa. So I mean, it's not like those aren't the stiffest competition, but we lost to Ohio, so I don't know what how to really measure that. But I mean, it seems mostly that this is going to be strength on strength to me, Jake, because Dylan Gabriel, he is slinging the thing. They're not a heavy run team. I mean, Walker, their leading back, 176 yards on the year. I mean, that's Iowa State numbers.
Yeah, they were really struggling to run the ball on Cincinnati. They honestly played kind of it was an odd brand of football at Cincy. They got up by 2 scores, and then it was just punt, 3 and out, get the ball back, punt, pin them deep. And Cincinnati was just kind of, they were stuck. They couldn't score. the Bearcats got the ball in the red zone a couple different times, and OU just stood strong. So on top of avoiding mistakes and avoid making it a track meet, the Cyclones are probably only going to get, I don't know, 3 or 4 chances in the red zone. You have to leave all of those chances with points.
Yeah.
Ideally touchdowns, but no missed field goals.
Right.
So, and that's not even just an OU specific thing. That's going to be what it takes to win in the Big 12, and even more specifically, win in the Big 12 on the road.
Yeah, for sure. I think another, it's hard to say that we took Brock Purdy and Breece Hall and Charlie Kolar for granted, but I think the biggest difference that they made was it felt like every time Iowa State got the ball inside the 20, they were leaving with points. Because they were just automatic. It was Charlie Kolar up the seam. It was Breece Hall breaking a tackle to the outside. It was Brock Purdy making something special happen. And it was certainly better against Oklahoma State. There were a couple plays outside the red zone that led to touchdowns as well. But I feel like that's really where those guys are missed. It's not necessarily between the 20s, but rather inside the 20s.
Oh, 100%. It just feels like, well, hopefully when they turn the corner at Oklahoma State, but it felt like last year and then the start of this year, it just felt too methodical on how to get in the end zone. I think back to the Texas Tech game last year in November, or might as well have been January with how cold it was. when they had first and goal from like the 2 or something like that, and tried the same play from shotgun 4 different times.
Yeah.
You don't have to think this through that hard.
No.
Put your quarterback under center, push him in there.
Yeah.
Pull the old Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
And you're totally right with Purdy, Breece, and Kolar. And even dating back, you go Montgomery, Hakeem Butler, Allen Lazard.
Yeah.
It's just put the ball in the hands of your playmakers and let them make a play. Especially when you have 6, 7 tries to do it in the red zone. And I think Iowa State has those playmakers. Maybe not to the level of those guys yet, but Rocco has shown accuracy on short mid balls, and then on top of that, I think Ben Bramer is a dude. So
yeah, we didn't really talk about Bramer in the Oklahoma State game because he didn't have that sort of big play, but he was a solid sort of. I think he had 4 catches. He was just kind of a solid dude that would just make a play if you got him the ball. So and he's a big target. He's a big target. So if you're in the red zone, it's not necessarily a throw it to Ben Bramer every time, but that's a big target that you can sort of Jimmy Graham your way into some of these touchdowns where you just say, hey, my guy's 6'7" and your guy's 6'3". So
yeah, I mean tight ends are valuable even more so in the red zone because they're just a big target. Usually not usually. The field always gets smaller when you're in the red zone. So,
yeah.
But when the window gets smaller, the field gets smaller. You look for your big guy, and that's what Purdy did, and I think that's what Rocco could probably try to do.
I like that. I like that. So moving forward to maybe the most important part of the Oklahoma-Iowa State game here, Jake. The line is -20 for Oklahoma. Now, that's a lot of points. Now, I understand that Oklahoma is very good, and Iowa State's sort of this unproven, are they going to continue what they did against Oklahoma State, or are they going to not move the ball like they did, against Iowa and Ohio? But 20 points is a lot, even for a game at night in Norman. What did you think when you first saw that -20?
I thought it was just too many points. In my head, I would have thought probably like 15, 16, somewhere in there. But when you look back at Iowa State's games in Norman, the last 3 trips dating back to 2017, OU's outscored Iowa State by 1 point.
Yeah.
101 to 100.
Yeah.
So Matt Campbell coach teams have played very well in this game. Granted, this is a different Matt Campbell team.
Right.
Almost none of these guys were even on the team when they played there in 2021. That's how young Iowa State is. So I can also speak from firsthand experience. I attended a game there. It's just a different feel. It's similar to that of Allen Fieldhouse, where you always feel like something's going to go wrong.
Yeah.
And in a night game, the year Iowa State won in 2017 was that 11 a.m. kick, so you're able to maybe get a sleepier Sooners team.
Yeah.
I don't think you'll get that with a night game.
No.
College football night, it's just harder to win on the road. But 20 points, I did feel like it was too much, especially when I think that this might be a bit of an uglier game.
Yeah. I think that was really the biggest thing that stood out to me was that Iowa State, just by nature of how they play defense and how they play the game of football now, it doesn't feel like they're ever, take away the TCU game last year, which was all kinds of misery from a betting, quote unquote betting standpoint. But it just doesn't, Iowa State's defense is not going to let them lose by 20. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. And I saw that CW posted on Twitter today that Iowa State's 6-0 against the spread under Campbell when it's 17 or more points. I think that's telling for one, just the brand of football that Iowa State plays. You're playing a more defensive style of football. That'll tend to keep games closer. And then I just think Coach Campbell coach teams will always be better as underdogs.
Yeah.
We've seen that dating back to the start. So
yeah.
I don't know whether it's how he motivates guys when they're behind instead of ahead, but we've had a pretty big sample size to it now to where that they can play up to their competition pretty much no matter who it is, because they've shown that already.
Yeah. I really like Iowa State to cover that 20. I think it's definitely too big of a number. Like you said, I was expecting Oklahoma to be a 2-score favorite. It would not have surprised me if this line was Oklahoma by 14, Oklahoma by 13.5, whatever. I did really think. I also think the over under being 48.5 is too high.
Yeah.
I could really see this being a slugfest, but
I think the good play would be Iowa State's points in the under.
Yeah.
You could get yourself some good value there, and
I think so too.
Keys it by a couple points. I think that's a pretty good bet.
Yeah. All right, Jake. We've come to the sort of moment of truth here. What's you got a bold prediction for us on Saturday?
A bold prediction. I'm going to say that there are 4 turnovers total in this game.
Okay. I could see that.
I think, I'll just say it. I think both quarterbacks will throw 2 interceptions. And the timing and the part of the field where those interceptions are will determine whether or not this is a 1-score game going into the last few minutes. That'll be my bold prediction.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's a good one. I'll go. I liked this talk about tight ends in the red zone, Jake. I liked it so much. I'll go Iowa State tight ends score 2 touchdowns on Saturday.
Oh, wow. Okay. I wonder in the last game Iowa State had 2 tight end touchdowns. Are you saying just like 2 different tight ends?
Yeah, so like I think it was it UNI, Easton Dean had one and Bramer had one.
Oh yeah, Dean did have.
Yeah, Dean had the one where he raced to the pylon.
Yes.
And he could have had one on Saturday if he didn't stutter step after he caught the ball at the 5-yard line. But, yeah, I like 2 touchdowns from the tight ends on Saturday.
That's a good one. Yeah, I do think if Iowa State wins, they will have to probably be a little more death by 1,000 paper cuts opposed to you're probably not going to get two different 30-yard touchdowns from Daniel Jackson, a 35-yarder from Knoll. It's probably going to have to be like a 12-yard pass to Bramer and 7-yard pass to Higgins, blah, blah, blah.
All right, Jake. Score for Saturday. What do you got?
All right. I've been thinking about this one a lot. I think I'm going to go OU 26-13.
Okay.
But it's not going to be a game where Iowa State fans feel great, but they're not going to feel terrible about it either.
Right.
It's just going to be, you know what, you lost to a better team, and you did all you could. That's kind of how I'm thinking this game will go.
Yeah. I could see a very similar game to last year where it just feels like Iowa State's in it and they just make that one mistake. And then they feel like they get back in it and they make that one mistake. And then you look at the scoreboard at the end of the day and it's a two touchdown win for Oklahoma. And it never really feels like it's a 2-touchdown win for Oklahoma, but it just kind of ends up there anyway. So I kind of like your score there. I'll go, let's go 27-17, 27-14, something like that. I just think
we're both in the same ballpark.
Yeah, I just think it's gonna be if this game ended exactly how the game in Ames last year ended, it would not shock me at all.
Yeah, it's probably the most likely outcome.
Yeah.
If I had an opinion on it.
That or what happens is Iowa State's down 14 with 5 minutes left and we score to make it a one-score game, because that seems to be how a lot of these one-score games happen. To just, rub salt in the wound that it's 7 points or less, but
Yeah, I mean that's been the last two games against Oklahoma. The ones that you just said. Obviously last year was kind of felt like you were in it, but you weren't really in it.
Yeah.
It was close the whole game. And then 2021, the game was over. Purdy was in the locker room. You're down 14, and then sure enough, Decker scores a touchdown. Defense gets a stop, and you've got a drive with a chance to win it.
Yeah.
So that's the Iowa State formula of get the ball back with a chance to tie or win, and then stupid turnover on downs.
Yeah, I think it was that was the year Purdy got absolutely roped a couple times and had to go. Yes. He gave up the scoop and score at the end of the half. It was a big play, and then I can't remember who it was hit him. I think it was on like the first drive of the third quarter. Was it Winfrey? Perrion Winfrey,
yes,
I think.
It was Winfrey. Yep.
Just absolutely smoked it. I think I was streaming for that game because I remember yelling a bunch about that not being called targeting. But
I was there.
I don't know.
You're livid.
I don't know if you knew this, Jake. That's actually the last regular season game that Brock Purdy's lost.
Yeah, I was just about to say there was a point where we thought that might be Purdy's last game.
Yeah.
Because he went in for concussion protocol, and we were like, well, if he's got a concussion, he won't be able to play next week.
Right.
And next week was against TCU. And you're like, well, maybe he won't play in the bowl game. So that was a genuine concern.
Yeah.
I remember of Iowa State fans. So it was great that he came in and obviously had a fantastic senior day.
Yeah.
Against TCU.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, that's gonna do it for us. Jake, do you have any final closing thoughts?
Yeah. What are you feeling about your Packers tonight?
Well, I'll be streaming for the game, hopefully. So if you want to, actually, this probably won't go up until Friday, so the people watching this probably missed it. But yeah, I don't know. The injuries, man, Jake. They just need to be healthy. Yeah. Christian Watson's questionable, but should play. Aaron Jones is questionable, but should play. I don't know what Bakhtiari's deal is. I mean, I
saw he just got put on the IR.
Did he really?
Yeah, that was like right before I hopped on that.
Oh man, that's brutal. Because I mean, there was that whole thing where like he didn't play in Atlanta, and everyone was like, "Oh, is it because it's turf?" Because Rodgers had just gone down, and Bakhtiari was one of the big sort of advocates for getting rid of the turf that week, and so everyone was just like, "Oh, is he not playing because it's turf?" Well, if he just got put on IR, it's definitely not because he wasn't playing because of the turf. But I mean, it's just been brutal, man. He's been such a great left tackle for us for a decade, and just to see him struggle with these injuries really sucks. So
Yeah, injuries are the worst part of football.
they really are. They really are. All right. Well, I think the Packers can pull it out just because it's a home game, but it should be close. I think the line is like going back and forth between a point and a half either direction, so should be a good game.
Been following along.
Yeah, should be a good game. Hopefully the Packers pull it out. But yeah, that's gonna do it for us. Jake Brend, thank you for joining me. People can catch you on Iowa Everywhere, and there will be links down below to your Twitter and the Iowa Everywhere Twitter. The Firmly Entrenched podcast.
Yep, and Local 5.
Local 5. All right, that's going to do it for us. Thank you, everybody, for watching. If you enjoyed, leave a like down below. Comment your thoughts on Iowa State, Oklahoma State, and what you think will happen as Iowa State travels to Norman for potentially the last time. Cyclones and Sooners on Saturday, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.
Thanks, David.